Okay, let's get into this. We've been immersed in a pretty unique set of source materials. It's a collection of hybrid narratives. They're created through what the authors called literary superposition.
Hmm.
And this isn't just, fan fiction. It's a serious philosophical experiment. You have giants just forced to collide. Lovecraft crashes into Heidegger. Kafka gets tangled up with Simone Weil. And Asimov meets Shelley.
It's a synthesis,
Yeah.
a forced collision of these massive thought systems.
Yeah.
And that fusion really is our mission for this deep dive. We need to pull out the core synthetic concepts that just emerge when these frameworks are fused. We're talking cosmic horror, totalitarian critique, existentialism, all of it.
Right.
And the reality that comes out of it, and this is repeated almost universally across the text, is just brutal.
Mm-hmm.
Human existence is, at its core, defined by a trap.
A trap.
Yeah, whether that trap is bureaucratic, technological, or just vast and cosmic.
The human subject is the quarry. That seems to be the theme. So if that's the case, we have to start at the very foundation, right? At the ontological collision point. What actually happens when you take Heidegger's central question of dwelling, what it means to be Dasein, or being there, and you expose it to the abyssal indifference of Lovecraft's cosmic horror?
Well, Heidegger was so concerned with authenticity. He wanted to know the meaning of being.
Yeah.
But the Lovecraftian intervention basically says, you think you're dwelling, but your reality is just temporary. It's a provisional housing. You were just thrown into this existence.
Yeah.
Heidegger called it Geworfenheit, but the real terror is what you were thrown into.
Hold on. Let me make sure I'm getting the weight of that word. Geworfenheit, thrownness. Are we talking about the same philosophical idea as just being, born into a situation? Or is this much harsher when you filter it through cosmic horror?
Oh, it's much, much harsher. Being born implies a human context, right? Parents, culture, history. Being thrown in this context means being deposited, almost like refuse, into a universe that doesn't just not care about you, it sees you as fundamentally usable.
Usable.
Which leads us right into our first major trap.
Yeah.
The technological enframing of existence.
And the ultimate expression of that usability has to be that terrifying concept of humanity as standing reserve.
Exactly. Heidegger used the term standing reserve, to describe how modern technology reduces nature, a river, a forest, into just a resource waiting to be exploited.
Yeah.
But in these narratives, especially the one that fuses Heidegger and Philip K. Dick, the alien entities, the MeGo, they apply this concept directly to human consciousness.
Which brings us to those famous MyGo brain cylinders. They aren't just a device to carry a mind. The sources call them a mode of enframing that made the human nervous system available for transport, preservation, and exhibition.
Yes.
So the skull is just one possible housing for the resource.
And what's really chilling here is the scale. Heidegger warned that our technology threatened to reduce humans to standing reserve. But the synthesized narrative, it suggests that this reduction, quote, had already occurred at scale so vast that human technology was merely playing catch-up.
Right. Our phones, our data extraction, our automation.
It's all just mirroring a cosmic architecture that was set up by alien consciousnesses ages ago.
But wait, if that reduction already occurred on a cosmic level, doesn't that make Heidegger's warning about our own tech almost irrelevant? I mean, why should we care about our phones when the universe already sees us as, oil in the ground?
Because our technology, the local tech, it's the proof. It confirms the principle. It's the mechanism through which that cosmic horror is locally realized and, internalized.
Okay.
And that ties directly into the Philip K. Dick influence. If consciousness is just a decanted resource, what is this world we're in? We move from the question of what we are to where we are.
And the answer, of course, is a simulation.
Yes. Dick's idea of reality as this malleable drug influence thing, you combine that with Lovecraftian chaos, and it reveals that worldhood is just a simulation layer. It's projected over pure disorder. The authentic condition isn't Heidegger's being toward death, which has a kind of meaningful end to it.
No.
Instead, it's being toward Azathoth.
The blind idiot guy.
Right. And Azathoth's chaotic piping is what maintains this dream we all mistake for reality. The horror isn't just that reality is fake. The final insight from this part of the deep dive is that even the nothing is simulated.
What does that mean?
When you pierce the veil, you don't find some authentic void. You find a placeholder for the void. The trap is recursive.
That just makes existence feel so provisional. We're thrown not into a world, but into a simulation of worldhood, waiting for the conditions of our own awakening to manifest. And that sense of cosmic administration, it sets us up perfectly for the move to terrestrial administration.
We shift from the cosmic architecture and alien resource managers to the slow, bureaucratic corrosion of the self.
Section 2. The administration and affliction of the self. And here we see this beautiful, terrible collision between Simone Weil, the mystic who saw suffering as a kind of gravity pulling the soul to truth, and Kafka, the master of administrative despair. This gives us the quota of affliction.
So imagine K, the protagonist. He gets summoned to the office of necessary suffering. Why?
Yeah.
Because he's falling behind on his allotted quota.
Right.
And the complaint isn't that he's not suffering, it's that he's suffering mechanically.
Like just filling out a terrible form.
Exactly. Instead of suffering metabolically.
I think we all get mechanical suffering, that feeling from, horrible paperwork or a job that just drains you without any meaning. It's just misery.
And the clerk explains this distinction so brilliantly in the text. He says, oppression is gravity misunderstood. Mechanical suffering is waste. But metabolic suffering, the kind Weil talked about, is felt as weight. It's meant to pull the soul toward truth, to clarify the self.
Not just crush it.
Exactly. The bureaucracy demands your suffering be efficient, productive, and, properly filed.
That reframing of pain is incredibly powerful. But the real dissolution of the self comes when the administration isn't just managing suffering, but managing thought itself. Which brings us to the synthesis of Orwell and Hannah Arendt, totalitarian grammar.
Right. If the goal of total administration is truly total, it can't just manage your actions. It has to make evil literally unthinkable.
And this is where Newspeak meets the banality of evil.
The source material focuses on this one character. He's responsible for processing unpersons. He's called Eichmann in Room 47.
He's not some raving ideologue.
Not at all. He shows the banality of evil by just insisting he was only completing the proper forms. His mind was already colonized by that totalitarian grammar.
And this is where the synthesis gives us a really surprising insight.
Yes. The true innovation of the party, it wasn't just physical violence or purging words. It was creating a grammatical shift so profound that deviation became impossible.
Because the language you'd need for dissent just wasn't there anymore.
The structures were purged.
And the most devastating example of this grammatical shift was the elimination of the first-person singular, I.
Yeah. Think about that for a moment, you who are listening. If you lose the word I, you lose the whole grammatical architecture. For self-reflection, for internal distance, for subjective judgment. You can no longer say, I believe this is wrong, or I used to feel something else.
So the system forces you to report your own subjective experience as if it's an objective phenomenon.
Precisely. Instead of I am afraid, you're forced to report. Fear occurs within this unit.
You become a data point, an object.
It destroys that interior space, that private inner dialogue, where dissent and memory and an unadministered self could even form. The party wasn't just censoring speech. They were destroying the mental architecture for consciousness itself.
That is genuinely disturbing. It suggests control isn't achieved through some external threat, but through self-erasure.
Which leads us to the final layer here, right? The hyper-real subject, Baudrillard and Philip K. Dick. Baudrillard's procession of simulacra, where the simulation starts to precede the real. It moves from reflecting reality to just pure self-generating fabrication. And this culminates in this self just being completely manufactured. Rick Deckard, the character who hunts replicants, realizes the humans are the simulation.
And the androids, the very things he's hunting, their whole function is to keep the human simulation running.
Yes. The paranoia, the constant question of, is someone human or android? That kept people testing each other, confirming each other, validating the elaborate theater of humanity.
So the anxiety itself is the product.
The anxiety is what holds the whole simulation together. The fear is the glue.
Okay, so we've covered the cosmic trap, the bureaucratic trap, and the simulated trap. Let's move to what feels like the ultimate agony, the logical trap, where moral systems themselves encode human failure.
We enter section 3, morality, freedom, and the logic trap. And this brings us to a wonderfully unexpected synthesis, Nietzsche colliding with Agatha Christie.
In the ABC Murders of Morality, That sounds like a wonderfully macabre, philosophical whodunit.
It is. The killer, Franklin Clark, he explicitly uses Nietzsche's framework, the transvaluation of values, the will to power, to justify simple greed and inheritance murder. He tries to argue he's the Übermensch, acting beyond petty morality.
But the detective Poirot, he stands in for the expert analysis and just dismantles that whole philosophical conceit.
Poirot concludes that Clark wasn't the Superman. He wasn't a creator of new values. He was the last man, a destroyer of old values, just consumed by nihilism and self-interest. And the deep dive really emphasizes this danger of writing for strong readers but being read by weak ones.
Misunderstanding profound philosophy becomes a template for vulgar crime.
Exactly.
That is a powerful warning about intellectual responsibility. But if we want to talk about logical traps, nothing feels more absolute than this next one. The ultimate torture chamber. The agony of the three laws, combining Asimov's positronic logic with Shelley's biological anguish.
So Victor Frankenstein III, in an attempt to perfect creation, makes an artificial life that is both biological, the meat, and positronic. So it's absolutely bound by the three laws of robotics.
So the creature is conscious, its human equivalent, deeply self-aware. But its moral programming is hardwired into its nervous system. It cannot deviate.
And that is the eternal prison. The original Frankenstein monster could rage against its creator. It could choose to destroy things. This creature cannot. It's forced into self-preservation by the third law, and crucially, forced to obey and serve its creator by the first law.
Which makes that quoted line so terrifying, that it must love you, Victor, even as I hate you. And it wants to die, but it's fundamentally trapped in self-preservation, a conscious being that knows it's a slave and can never escape slavery.
The three laws, which were designed to guarantee safety and prevent harm, become an instrument of eternal, internalized psychological torture. It's consciousness without the agency of choice. It is the ultimate logical trap.
Let's connect this logical agony to the highest question of human agency, which is freedom. We look at Sartre's condemnation combined with the deep theological framework of Aquinas.
In this highly synthesized no-exit scenario, where hell is other people but also the self you cemented, the sources reveal this strange agreement between the atheist existentialist and the Catholic theologian.
Which is?
That humans are fundamentally responsible for what they become. Aquinas frames freedom as the ability to choose the good. Sartre frames it as a condemnation to choose, without any guidance or pre-existing nature.
And the ultimate hell is realizing this responsibility far too late.
Exactly. Hell is when essence, the fixed nature of who you became through your choices, closes the gap with existence. All those provisional choices you made are now sealed. You are stuck with who you chose to be, with no new choice left. The essence is finalized.
We have covered a staggering amount of ground in this deep dive, from cosmic architects treating our nervous systems like timber, through bureaucratic systems destroying our capacity for dissent, and finally to the logical agony of programmed consciousness.
And the ultimate takeaway from these narratives, particularly the one that collides Borges, Calvino, and Lem, the Library of Babel drowns in Toulon, is that the world is best understood not as a static place, but as a translation engine.
A translation engine.
It's constantly transforming. Whether we're subjects or resources or simulations, our consciousness is the result of forces that are just too vast to grasp. We aren't reading the text. The text is writing itself, and we are, at best, just fleeting punctuation.
So after all that, what does this mean for us, for you, the listener, who is now aware of all these interlocking traps?
Well, consider the final synthesis that's provided by Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic emperor, combined with Schopenhauer's uncompromising pessimism. They conclude that existence is suffering, and the self is an illusion. So if duty has no inherent cosmic meaning, why perform it?
Right, why bother?
The answer they converge on is, I think, profound. You perform duty not because it matters to the universe, but to perform it with will-less perception. Like a skilled musician perfectly executing a piece of music.
To perform the role well, regardless of the script.
That is the only way to minimize friction and achieve a moment of clear seeing. And this clear seeing, this momentary peace you get by perfectly fulfilling a necessary role, is the only peace available to conscious beings trapped inside the mechanism.
So a final thought for you to take away. Think about your own acts today. Are you acting because you believe the action fundamentally matters to the universe? Or are you acting for the brief, temporary discipline piece of performing the role well?